And this is it for now. So for the assignment where I describe the video evidence of student outcomes chart, so basically, did I cover all 10 areas? Communicating clear learning goals and providing those came in video 1, and that was early on. So when it says start time and end time, I submitted like 3 different excerpts for that, the 5th assignment. And so I put video number 1, but I did label it separately as Marzano Goals Journal Video period 2. And that was an 8-minute and 50-second clip. And in that, it showed element 1, where I have students fill out journals, and we do this 3 times each unit. So there's a pre-journal, a during journal, and a post-journal. And in the pre-journal, for instance, they set their short-term learning goals and their long-term learning goals in terms of that unit. So if we're talking about restaurant, what do you want to be able to do with that? And how do you want to be able, or what score would you like to achieve? And then the during, they check in and say, how is this unit going? Could we do anything differently? Is there anything unclear? And then they do a post journal where they talk about how they ended up. And in the pre and the post, explicitly there are examples of that rubric, and they basically self-assess. Is my work at a below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced level? So they're getting to be A, familiar with the jargon, but B, placing themselves in those levels. So it's helpful in that sense. And then the post I like because they are like, how much effort did you put in? And like, how did that contribute to your outcome? And a lot of them are that would maybe have a suffering grade. It's because they just didn't put in the work. And they're honest about it. It's like, it's not that I didn't understand, I just didn't do it. It was on me. So in terms of those clear learning goals, they set those goals and journal about them, but there's also that rubric. And then element 2 had evidence in that video clip as well, using directions, vocab. For instance, students were tracking their progress in their journals, so pertaining to that directions unit around town, and like taking rechts, links, right and left, and then again, evidence of those learning goals and progress. They self-assess. How are you doing in this unit? Is the grading fair? Is there a variety of assessments? Which leads into the assessment area, which also occurred in video number 1. Although it was a different clip, Marzano period 3 goals journal, a 7-minute, 7-second clip, where they had evidence of element 4 using informal assessments of the whole class. So when it wasn't for a grade, they just, it was their interpretive, and they were reviewing and just kind of checking, like informally. I think we use thumbs up, or, are you having anything you're confused about, and giving that whole class feedback. German 1s did that, German 2s did that, and just rating their confidence in that goal piece. And then I was able to adjust the lessons if they were struggling at all. For instance, I gave them what I thought was, later on you'll see in the resources piece, a Jamboard to help scaffold and give them basic vocab, and almost like how we were talking about closed sentences and sentence structure pre-filled in, that they can just take that and either plug in their word for right or left. Like, I want it to go right or left. I give them the I want to go, and they just plug in right or left. And so I thought that would be a good way to do that. Okay. And so it turns out that, and maybe this isn't with the assessment piece, but that was a good extension piece too for kids, so that if kids were a little bit behind and they didn't get to make each other a jam board, it was okay. Like, they didn't suffer grade wise. But for those kids that were done, it was almost like an extra benefit, because they were like, since they were using the vocab to make each other a study guide of that vocabulary around town, it just reinforced that vocabulary, and it came from them and they were using it. So anyway, that was an added bonus. Direct instruction lessons appeared in video 2 with a 4-minute 46 duration time. And that's where I showed off the chunking. And there was evidence of German 2 chunking in their chores unit, because I showed color coding, and like there's one spot for who does the chore, one spot for when they do the chore, duration of the chore, what room it's in. That might be about it. And so there's a lot of concepts in one sentence, but to color code it was how I chunked that out for them to make it manageable, and that they could create their own sentences, just being like, oh, this one's who it is, so it's blue, so I gotta pick who does the laundry in my situation, or that kind of thing. And then element 8, recording and representing content, also took place in that excerpt. So it was element 6 and 8. Back to the chunking, well, yeah, was 821 video, German 1 family. Again, family had a lot of concepts. Like, I got to talk about my family's hair color, eye color, age, name, job. So we split those into color coding strips, basically, and like, okay, I have to cover the age of, and they made a fake family tree, so they, Donald Trump was my grandfather, so mein Großvater heißt Donald Trump would be in one color, and then his age, and then his hair color, different colors that way. So you see excerpts of that. Practicing and deepening lessons was on the most recent video submission, number 3, and that occurred. See, this video, I finally did it right. Instead of like sending you chunks of videos, I made it into one video. So that occurred from 11:41 to 18:45 in video 3. I covered element 10, which was similarities and differences, one of my favorites with German, because I try to see how similar German is to English to make it doable for the kids. And so right now we're doing weather in German 1, and we recorded the lesson where they're converting Fahrenheit to Celsius, because Germany uses Celsius. And that like aha moment of a kid going, oh. And then the next one was my favorite, where it's miles per hour. He was trying to talk about wind speed, and he was like, oh, so in kilometers per hour it's going to be 60. And I'm like, yes, kilometer pro Stunde. And then in the travel unit, German 2, we did similarities just because of vocab being like das Hotel, das Restaurant, their taxi. Like, it's pretty much the same word. Or in the last excerpt, or example, I guess, would be showing that I had charts on the front of the room, but that didn't come out in the video because swivel didn't swivel. But if you just change one letter, like I have a chart that's green and it's T to D. So if you just change the T to a D, and we do a phrase of the day, and so they were learning, oh, if I change the T in Tropfen to a D, it's drops. Or they were doing B to V, and it was like, oh, Uber goes to over. You maybe have to change the vowel, but like the B in Uber goes to a V, over. Oh, I just had to change one letter. So, and then knowledge application lessons was also in the most recent video number 3, and that was from 1845 to 2615 for element 12, engaging students in cognitively complex tasks involving hypothesis generating and testing. And so basically, we were just having kids look at the vocab and like kind of hypothesizing, like, what do you think? And trying to give them visuals, like, here's my example of Wetter, and what do you think die Sonne is? And so making that also with similarities, like Sonne and sun in the sky are similar. But like just putting that hypothesis out there and like willing to trust that it's okay. I can just take a guess, educated one, but like, do they feel safe enough to do that? What I found was a little bit challenging was to observe this on a video. So it was like, I think they're doing these things, but am I getting evidence of it? So that was one thing that was maybe a weakness, but I just think I need to keep making it very explicit as part of my lessons, like maybe the introduction or the way I like present it in class, like would you hypothesize, or what do you guess this is? A lot of times I feel like I might get a little bit impatient and just do it for them. So it comes with that wait time and just be like, okay, presenting it and just let them come up with at least a hypothesis. Might not always be correct and they'll test it, but and then the element 13, providing resources and guidance, happened at 8:40 to 11:41. This is where I showed them the Jamboard to help them write those directional sentences around town. So for me, that was a resource. Like, I'm going to give you an example, but then we also have them use my sample to create Jamboards for their peers. So it's one thing where I provided the resource initially, but then they created their own resources for their peers as a springboard off that. And then I also showed an example of the German 2 travel unit where I put in basically those closed sentences where it's like, my flight cost blank, and they put in the price of their flight. But so mein Flug kostet, you put in how many euro or whatever. And yeah, then strategies that appear in all types of lessons was in video 1, and that was element 18, revising knowledge. So students weren't necessarily right on track with what I wanted their outcome to be, so we had to kind of give them some more supports and then go back to it. And then element 19 as well, reflecting on learning. Again, those are those moments of journaling. So think of what we've learned and how do you learn best. Maybe there's some other thing I'm not addressing with how you like to learn. Like, I try to offer those ones for differentiated learners, and like, would you like to show this in a picture instead of words? Or how hard have you tried? Are there any items you're still confused about? And just how could you improve, or how could I improve to make them better? So, and then engagement, video number 2. That was the German 2 Zoom game. And that was a duration of 6 minutes and 42 seconds. And this was using academic games. And so that video showed the students using their health games in German 2 over at Cottonwood Elementary School, teaching the elementary students some German with their health vocab in a game format. And then another example on there is when we did the direction unit, there's a QR code thing I set up around the school, and they have to scan the code and read the directions in German, and then it'll bring them to the next code, kind of like a scavenger hunt. And then rules and procedures was video 1, duration of 14 minutes and 27 seconds. And that was element 36, acknowledging adherence to rules and procedures. And just, I mean, we have this procedure, like we write down the phrase of the day every day. So it was a little bit of this next one too, of showing reserve or whatever, patience. But like, we have that procedure, and the kid said, I didn't even write it down and I knew the answer. But I'm like, our procedure is let's write down the phrase every day. So just kind of, they know how to find the new, I mean, there are things we do, like there are just procedures that we do every week. We do a news quiz of like the famous people's birthdays, current events, and famous events like throughout history on that day. And so we just have a ritual. I mean, it's just every week. And so it's like, you guys know better when you don't follow those procedures, and just how to work with that. And then Marzano video 1, period 7, mostly not adhering to, showed element 37, acknowledging lack of adherence to rules and procedures. So some students were talking when we studied for the news quiz, and then the students had a cell phone out. That was one example. So I gave them a warning and then the infraction because they didn't heed the warning. And then we needed it quiet. And then some were putting each other down, and they know that's not acceptable, and cussing, and that wasn't acceptable. And one kid had a belt out. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is all on video. So thank you for bearing with me this semester in all my video clips. You got the real life stuff here. Then one of my favorites is relationships, because we're a small school. And so video 3, the most recent, had an end, or at 8:40, or ended. No, it started at the beginning of this last video, and it took 8 minutes and 40 seconds is the stop time. And so using verbal and nonverbal behaviors, and this was, I think, on my other recording, I just kind of debriefed, and I was like, this is one of my favorites, and I just want to keep this recording of being positive and just being like, sehr gut, or wunderbar, or they klopf on their desk. So just showing how many positive. I guess it's because we had talked about the negatives and like not adhering to rules, and then it was like, but here's all the good things. So I like that comes after, and it leaves me on a higher note than just these are all the miserable things that happen when they don't follow rules, but here's all the positives. And then the example of trying to connect with the student that was a reluctant learner, and just getting to know his car and like interests outside of school that way. So, and then the displaying objectivity and control. Yes, there's a lot of moments where I'm just having to be patient when students, or just redirecting students, and just reminding students to be respectful of not just one another, but of the teacher as well. And then lastly, communicating high expectations. That was video number 2, and I had its own video, so it was a duration of 9 minutes and 12 seconds. And that was the example of the German 1 family, reluctant learner. But that was kind of the proud moment, if you recall, in the one where we do like a little video throughout. Anyway, so this was the one where he was reluctant, and I was giving wait time. I had presented it. Everyone else, I mean, I don't know. I felt like I did it a very just service and like was presenting it very clearly. Other students were right on. And then I offered a peer to help because I didn't want it to be an awkward silence. Like, you don't want that, just adds to the anxiety. So I was like, okay, well, maybe you can help get him back on track. And then at the end of that clip, he ended up volunteering answers himself. So that was like the proud moment. Like, yes, it did pay off in the end. And then the last element, I guess. Nope, there's one more, but element 42, asking in-depth questions of reluctant learners related to that. So when it was fake family member, description of age, I know there's a lot of stuff there, and we tried to break it down and color code it, but I guess he just seemed overwhelmed. And then, but I was not giving up, I guess. I wasn't trying to dumb it down. I mean, make it simple on his level, but not ask him any less. And this is kind of an ELL, English language learner thing we've talked about too, is you still want that rigor. You still want that high content. You don't want it dumbed down in the sense of, oh, well, just tell me the color blue. You want them to get that level. So it was like, I felt like I just don't want to give up on him. I want to keep that in depth. And then the last one, element 43, probing incorrect answers with reluctant learners. And again, that's that interpersonal familia vocab where they might not have it. So I'm like trying to redirect and like, so, or think of, well, that might work if it's female relationship, like your mom, the motor, but since this is a guy, we need a different ending and that kind of thing where you're trying to probe without shutting them down. All right. I guess that's covering all those 10 areas. Sorry if this was long. But once again, just all in all, this is an amazing course and process, both course 1 and 2. And so just thank you for the opportunity to be able to go through this process. And thank you mostly for watching all of the content that I recorded for you. And being so friendly and like positive even after watching everything. Okay. So, Dankeschön. Auf Wiedersehen.